Hey, it's Matt Sager, and Michael Keaton is all over the news, specifically regarding a return to Bruce Wayne and/or Batman. Some 30 years after he last played the character in Batman Returns, it looks as though he is at least in discussions to play either a Batman or simply Bruce Wayne, who for whatever reason is no longer wearing the cape and cowl in the upcoming Flash movie. That's huge. The very fact that there are talks going on, the very fact that all these media outlets are reporting on it is noteworthy. The Wrap says Batman Returns. Michael Keaton in talks to play Bruce Wayne in the Flash movie, saying that the plot will introduce general audiences to the idea of the multiverse, one of the core concepts underpinning DC Comics. It is. It's also one of the core concepts underpinning Marvel Comics. Marvel, of course, is poised to really get into exploring the multiverse, as was made clear by Avengers Endgame and the Avengers mucking about in time and creating several alternate realities, the upcoming What If Marvel show coming to Disney+, and of course the next Doctor Strange movie being titled Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But yeah, one could argue that DC Comics is even more of a multiverse-heavy franchise, in the comics at least. There's been these ongoing Justice League/Justice Society crossovers going on for decades. The Flash himself is the Earth 1 Flash, but before he ever debuted, way back in the 40s, there was an entirely different Flash, Jay Garrick, who now occupies a separate reality on Earth 2. The two Flashes met in 1964, and that was when Barry Allen was introduced, and that's the character we're exploring now in the Flash movie. Barry Allen will be played by Ezra Miller, just as he played the Flash in the Justice League movie. Now, Batman in that movie was Ben Affleck, but he's done. He's out. The upcoming Matt Reeves movie, The Batman, is going to star Robert Pattinson as Batman. So the idea of The Flash taking place in the same film universe, the DC Extended Universe, and featuring Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, yeah, that does seem to imply, at the very least, that they'll be exploring the multiverse. The Wrap says after nearly 30 years, Keaton is in talks to return to the role of Batman to appear alongside Ezra Miller in Warner Brothers' upcoming The Flash. The article goes on to say talks with Keaton are in the very early stages. It's far from a sure thing and can go either way. No details are currently available as to how big or small Keaton's role is. But they go on to say it's going to introduce general audiences to the idea of the multiverse. For the non-fanboy set, the multiverse refers to a shifting number of alternate realities that coexist within the larger reality depicted in DC Comics. Yeah, Rick and Morty fans will be deeply familiar with the idea of the multiverse. And it is a concept around which comics have revolved for decades. It's the only way that comics can continue to rely on the same characters, telling similar stories again and again and again, going back to, in some cases, the 40s, in other cases, the 60s. Yeah, there are always alternate realities being born. It's how, for DC, they're able to say that, yeah, Superman from the 40s, he's still around. The Flash from the 40s, ditto. Also Wonder Woman. And there was an entire Earth 2 for those heroes. A world in which Batman married Catwoman, which now has happened in our Earth. But they gave birth to the Huntress. The Huntress is obviously a very different character here on Earth 1. It gets pretty complicated, but it's really cool and does open the door for telling all kinds of stories with basically limitless suspension of disbelief. Yeah, this happened in this movie, and yes, this is happening in an ongoing movie franchise that coexists with this movie, and yet, while Pattinson is Batman in 9 out of 10 movies, The Flash may be hanging out on an entire different plane of reality in which Michael Keaton is still Batman, and that whole universe still matters, is still in continuity. The multiverse is great at maintaining all these different continuities, saying all of them matter, and whichever one is most fun for you, the reader, the viewer, none of that goes away. Which, yeah, we are capable of consuming fiction and saying, yeah, no, I prefer this version. I prefer that version. I'm okay with different iterations of these characters. But it is an extra nice little treat that the multiverse gets to spoon feed us a little bit and say, yeah, no, we are acknowledging that Keaton is still Batman in a way on one plane of reality. And you can see it in this movie. It would be a great treat to see him return to the role, multiverse or no. Because he was a phenomenal Batman, and he reminded us of that in the fantastic 2014 movie Birdman. Seeing Keaton back in the role of a superhero, a much more nuanced, neurotic, complicated one, it was very moving for me and for many audiences. Reminded us all of how great that first Batman was, silly though it may be in retrospect, because superhero films, TV shows, the very concept of comic-based properties in general is respected so much more now and treated so much more seriously. But none of that would have been possible without the original Tim Burton Batman movie starring Michael Keaton. So this is exciting. I have been reading reports all over the place. The article I just cited, of course, is from The Wrap, but other articles are saying stuff that, yeah, he's going to come back and he's going to be Bruce Wayne, but not Batman. Similarly, some were saying like a week ago when this rumor began that he would be playing Thomas Wayne and they would be touching on the Flashpoint version of Batman. That has been debunked. Somehow all of this is still in the rumor stage, and yet they're able to rule out stuff like the idea of a Thomas Wayne Flashpoint Batman. I think that's wise, at least at this point in the development of the DC Extended Universe. They're basically rebuilding from what had been a pretty flawed series of movies, trying to create some idea of coherence. And while it is bold and exciting that even at this early stage, they're talking about stuff like the multiverse, that is something that is in line with DC characters and stories. And I think they could pull it off. They could use it to, for instance, explain why, if Henry Cavill in fact does not return as Superman, how and why there's an entirely different guy wearing the Superman suit in future movies. Stuff like that. The Hollywood Reporter suggests that the role of Bruce Wayne would be even more important for not only The Flash, but the DC Extended Universe as a whole than we might think from these sort of clickbaity headlines about, is Keaton coming back? Is he going to be Bruce Wayne? Is he going to be Bruce Wayne and Batman? The real question is, what's the significance of his role? Is it going to be a cute cameo to make the fans happy? Is it going to be an alternate Batman in an alternate universe that we do or don't see again throughout the course of these DC movies going forward? Well, The Hollywood Reporter, in discussing Keaton's potential return to the DC universe, says, but wait, there's more. If a deal makes, Keaton wouldn't just return for Flash, but possibly for several other DC-oriented film projects. Sources have been telling The Hollywood Reporter that the role being envisioned for the veteran actor is akin to the role played by Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, something of a mentor or guide or even a behind-the-scenes string puller. Batgirl, for instance, is one of the projects in development that could fall into that category. Warner's had no comment. That's always exciting because no comment means you can speculate to your heart's desire, and the fact that they won't comment on it, depending on how you come at this story, that could just serve to bolster any number of beliefs, rumors, hopes you've got. That's kind of what it's doing for me, but Warner's may also have no comment because they're so early in production. Scripts have likely not yet been approved. They're being passed back and forth between writers and producers and story editors, then going on to get approved from the higher-ups at Warner's and AT&T. That is certainly a reason why I wouldn't expect a comment. But, it could also be because they're like, hey, don't spill our secrets about Michael Keaton coming back and being the DC Universe's version of Nick Fury. Shut up. Either way, it's pretty cool, pretty exciting, and a happy piece of Batman-related movie news, especially in contrast with the sort of sad bit of news. Joel Schumacher took over for Tim Burton and made the last several Batman movies of the 90s. And generally speaking, these movies were panned, and not without good reason. In my opinion, I know that they're getting a sort of re-examination in pop culture as, hey, these were underrated camp masterpieces, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I was not a fan of the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, but I was certainly a fan of much of his work. I mean, The Lost Boys, come on. I make fun of Corey Feldman all the time, but that is a classic. Schumacher has a huge resume of really great films throughout the years, and more important, he's a human being. He passed away yesterday at age 80. Like me, he's a born and raised New Yorker, born August 29th of 1939. Came up, ironically, for those of us who remember his Batman movies, as a costume designer, working in films like Woody Allen's Sleeper and Interiors, movies like Bloomin' Love, The Prisoner of Second Avenue, and The Last of Sheila. He was a production designer on the 1974 TV movie Killer Bees. I'm getting all this from Deadline, by the way. Oh, another movie he made that I think is a classic, a very prescient film, Falling Down, about the explosive, toxic, rage-filled middle-class white man. I think that movie foretold a lot of, sadly, what we're seeing in the world today. I look at the news, I look at Fox News, Trump rallygoers and supporters. I see a lot of that character out there. I'm not sure where Schumacher had the idea that this was boiling over in our country, this aggrieved, rage-filled guy who just one day snaps and justifies all of his actions because he sees himself as the good guy right up until the end. It speaks of some of the most visionary qualities that Schumacher had, some of the most underrated, insightful, and groundbreaking ideas that he had. Schumacher had been fighting cancer, according to a representative, for about a year. And I wish his family, friends, and loved ones all the best. It's always sad when we lose a great artist. And I'm glad I got to lead with the good news, because it's always depressing when we lose a great artist, whatever we thought of, for instance, his Batman movies. He's a human being and, generally speaking, taken in the aggregate, a pretty important filmmaker who contributed a great deal. I'd love to know how you feel about both these stories, the unfortunate, sad passing of Joel Schumacher and the open-ended and kind of uncertain but exciting news that Michael Keaton could be returning to the DC universe as either Batman or some other version, some non-superhero version of Bruce Wayne, starting in The Flash and maybe leading through to other upcoming movies in the DCEU. So please leave comments. Also, I'd love it if you'd follow me on social media. There are links in the description as to how you can do that, as well as to how you can support this podcast. If you're checking this out on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And if you're listening on a podcast network or app, please subscribe there and leave me reviews. Thanks very much. I'll talk with you soon.